Can you believe the biggest movie of the year, far and away, is in fact Barbie? A movie that was promised to all of us in these bright colors and craziness with Margot Robbie playing the titular character. But was it a good movie? We have three Barbies and three Ken to discuss. This is Last Page. Issue 18 of Last Page. Thank you for joining us. Like and subscribe. Subscribe and like. I am Maverick King. I am Ken. I am joined today by Cinephile Barbie, Monica Bryant. You can check out her filmmaking channel in the description below. Also joining us today, we have Basketball Barbie and Ken. Tony Antoine, RemingtonCKing, joining us across the powers of the internet and making her debut. Married Barbie and Ken, Mimi King, Jason Cedars. This is a couples edition of Last Page. I am very excited for this. We have clearly bucked our normal suits and attires of the corporate world and told our corporate overlords to shove it. And now we will discuss the biggest movie. This movie, I cannot believe. I knew it was going to be big, but no idea that it was going to dwarf Mission Impossible, which is a very sad state of affairs for America and the world as a whole. But nonetheless, this movie made on the opening weekend, it made a grand total of $162 million, $22,044. An incredible opening weekend. It only dropped 35% going into the second weekend, which typically movies drop about 50%, and this dropped 35%. Unbelievable success. The Barbenheimer hype was real. Oppenheimer's made a lot of money. This movie's made a lot of money. But the question is this movie good? Is it worth the hype? Is it worth all of the talk? Ms. Bryant, kick us off. What were your thoughts and feelings about Barbie?
I thought overall the movie was entertaining. There were parts where I was like, what? Because the humor didn't hit like they thought it was going to. But there, I got some chuckles out of the movie. And I don't know why the conservatives were so angry about this movie. It was a little weird that this movie made them so mad, but it's going to be okay.
It was very interesting because, yes, before, it's hard not to get sucked into the internet when people start talking about the Barbie movie, because it did seem like this big divide where it became this cultural war where the dude bros were not happy with Barbie. They were very upset with how this movie was portraying men, and I initially was like, all right, what is this movie going to be like? Because the trailer makes it look very goofy, very nonchalant, just like a fun time. When we all watched, when Tony, Remy, myself, and Jason, when we sat down and did a Last Page episode and watched the trailer of Barbie, we were all like, oh, this looks amazing. Watching the movie for myself, I felt mostly nothing, which is a credit to the movie because I felt, based on the internet, that maybe I would watch this movie and it would be like this big, like, oh my God, this movie is so cringe and it's so bad and it hates men. And really, it's just a goofy movie. It's a lampooning of corporate America, of man culture. It makes a lot of fun of men, but it's so like if you go watch The Expendables and you walk away from that being like, wow, they just made fun of men and they made all the women great. I understand if you're upset at that. When you go to watch Barbie, it's like, I have a philosophy that, men and women both, there's times in your life you have to go to the same sex to complain about the other sex. And I feel like this movie is kind of like that, in the sense of like, this is a girl movie directed by a female with a lot of girl power messaging in it. And the goal of this movie was to have fun, girl empowerment, and yes, make fun of dudes at the same time. And if you're going to do that in a movie, Barbie's the movie to do it. Was it great? No, but I don't think the movie was meant for me. So, Basketball Barbie and Ken, what were your thoughts on this adventure?
I think overall, like Monica said, like it's entertaining. Like it's entertaining. You can take like your 5-year-old to go watch this. You can like a 30-year-old can watch it. Like you can have like a lot of people from the same like different age ranges in the movie, and you're gonna chuckle at something. You're going to laugh at least one or two of the jokes. I do feel like some of the humor was like you can tell that they were kind of like, okay, yeah, a 5-year-old would laugh at that, but like some of the humor wasn't for me. I laughed at maybe like 40% of the movie, like got a chuckle out of me. But yeah, it's like it's such a thing where it's like it's so obvious that this is not a movie to be like it's to be taken very lightly. Like there's some things that you should take from this, right? And like the very like messaging of like, oh, feminism is great, like look, like women are great, girl power, that's the very thing. But when you look under it, it was so obvious that they just took it and they just like turned it like they in a way kind of made fun of it in a way. So it's like, yeah, it's like super girl power, and like they do the whole thing where they just say patriarchy for like 30 minutes straight over and over and over again. And it's like it's supposed to be super like, oh my god, but it's like and it's in a funny way. So I think it did what it was supposed to do. It's an entertaining movie that everyone can go and watch. And if you come out of that and you're angry, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know.
This movie is woke liberal trash. Ben Shapiro, the real take on this. I can't believe what I'm hearing. You guys clearly shades on, can't see what's right in front of your face. No, I'm just kidding. No, I mean, yeah, you couldn't, if you go to this movie, the same type of energy that you would need to go to this movie and being like, this is like dangerous negative messaging towards men is like the same energy if you watch somebody play video games and you're just like, that's just going to make you violent. Like video games make kids violent. It's just like, dude, it's not to be taken seriously. There's a reason that a lot of people play video games and don't commit mass murder. But and so for this movie, it's just like, yeah, I was gonna say, it's just very much a movie for and supporting and then hyping up women while making fun of like you said, dude bros. And so I thought the movie was I was really excited about it when I first saw that trailer, and so I guess they did, which mission accomplished. They got me to go see it under the idea that I was really going to like it, and I didn't really, really like it. But unironically, my favorite part of the movie is Ryan Gosling. Ryan Gosling seems to be having the most fun while making this. Margot Robbie doesn't have a bad performance at all, but she's not nearly as like fun and silly. Like Ken is silly the whole movie, and he just gets kind of funnier and sillier as the movie goes on. So that's why I think I enjoy him. That's the energy that I went to for the movie. And so that's why I there's some really good parts in it though. But yeah, I was gonna say you gotta have pretty thin skin and pretty frail egos to go to this movie and come out offended.
So this is a really fun movie, like you guys have already said, and it's interesting because this is not a movie that I would have gone and watched had not I been invited to be on Last Page with you beautiful humans. So it felt really like completely open to whatever it's going to be. I don't really care. I have no expectations. And furthermore, like I didn't grow up necessarily playing with Barbies. They weren't something that I wasn't like a Barbie girl.
Mimi grew up playing with rocks and crystals, just in case anybody needs some context.
And I still am. But it was cool because my introduction into Barbies, because we didn't get them growing up, but when I was probably 8 to 10-ish, we were at my grandparents' in Alameda, and she gave us some Barbies from her kids. So these were Barbies from the 70s. And fun little tidbit, beginning of this movie Barbie, they show all these different Barbie outfits. And one of them is this beautiful orange flowy dress that Grandma Eva gave to me and my sisters. And we still have it somewhere at Mom and Dad's. But I was like, oh my God, that's the dress. It's like this authentic 70s vintage. Anyways, the movie was really fun because I went in with no expectations. And also not really, I haven't read anything online about it, so I don't know how many people are offended by it. But the silliness of that, I feel like kind of describes exactly what they were trying to do. Because for me, the movie wasn't necessarily like female empowerment, because we are lawyers, doctors, badasses, right? It was more so pointing and making fun of the patriarchy. And that I can totally get behind and be like, yeah, this is so silly. And when you reverse it, it's very easy to see like, oh, maybe this is ridiculous. So I really enjoyed that aspect of it. I thought that was really funny and well done. And I was like, I was the only one laughing out loud in the theater, along with the 3 70 to 80-year-olds behind me. No one else was really laughing at the theater. And I didn't know. I was like, at one point I snorted when Gosling was talking about like the patriarchy. Like I was laughing so hard. Remy as well, I'm on with you. Gosling was my favorite element of the whole movie. I felt like Margot could have been replaced and it wouldn't have made a big difference. However, I do feel like if it wasn't Margot Robbie and Ryan Gosling, would anybody have gone to see this? Truthfully, like I feel like they were the selling points of this movie. I feel like they both perform well. I feel like Gosling is the star. Overall, a fun movie. Will I watch it again? Probably not. Like I wasn't drawn too much of it that I can imagine rewatching it. It wasn't bad. I enjoyed it, but it was kind of like, oh, one and done. And maybe if it's on an airplane and I don't have the choice to switch it, I'll watch it again, maybe. But anyways, that's my quick analysis of what I liked and thought about it.
So much of the same points that you said, I was going to say, and we did not see this movie together. That's the other really funny part about this is we have a 3-year-old, and so we tag teamed. Yeah, she went to the theater first while I watched the kid, and then I went to the theater while she watched the kid, and so we hadn't talked about the movie yet. So that's interesting. You hit a lot of the same things. So you're 100% right and wrong, everyone. It's so crazy how we talk about the demographic of this movie, where we all thought it was just girls who played with Barbies. But when you looked around that theater, I'm sure you guys do, it was every demographic in that theater kind of watching that movie. And what was even funnier about that too is that some of the jokes hit some people and some of the jokes hit others. Like some people would be laughing. Like I remember chuckling so many times on some of the Ryan Gosling stuff when he just be like so overly exposing his body or just doing something so like silly. And I'm cracking up and some people beside me are just straight faced.
I felt judged.
Like,
I was like,
do you guys understand the silliness of this movie right now? And
silly.
Really what was they're trying to communicate. And so, Monica, I did not hear that there was any sort of this like rhetoric on the internet, because I never thought anyone would take this movie seriously or some message to convey the new direction, our gender approval or whatever this, I don't even know what the message really is. The bad one is that they're seeing in this one, because I would never have taken it seriously.
They don't like putting men down.
I guess so. It was so funny with that factor, of how the men were all leading Barbie and Mattel, and of course when they start dropping so much more ridiculous characters after character, where what's his name? Sarah, Michael Sarah.
Oh my God.
It's like as soon as he got introduced, you're like, oh, this is going really like the SNL almost kind of like wacky kind of Adam Sandler almost feel. And then when Will Ferrell's character, goes, and then even you can tell that they gave a lot of these comedic actors time to just do their own thing. Like there's a couple rants by Will Ferrell and even Ryan where you're like, they just kind of let him go for a little while. Like, and you can tell when they're doing that with movies, they're really trying to pull the best comedic angles out of some of these actors. So, silly movie, fun, a little too long for me. There was definitely parts where I'm sitting there like, okay, you could have trimmed this scene down. This movie did not need to be 2 hours, but as I was having that argument in my head in the theaters, I was like, well, there was a lot of emotional weight in the movie. And if you rushed through some of those scenes and didn't let Margot like kind of sit there and cry or sit there and kind of work to some of these things, or, some of the meetings she has with characters that are really cool throughout the movie, you can see that it is emotional. We're getting emotional connection to her, and that does take time. But only real complaint with the movie, but I had a much better time than I expected, because that was the other thing about this. I almost went in kind of dragging my feet like, let's get this over with kind of thing. And I'm sorry to say that, but I think I even said that before we did this whole Barbenheimer thing. I'm like, I'll see Oppenheimer, but I will not see Barbie. And then I'm like, okay, well, I guess I'll have to. Yeah. All of you other beautiful people are. And I enjoyed it much more than I thought I was going to. So I can't wait to talk about more positive things about this, actually.
Let's start with Margot Robbie. perfectly cast. I honestly don't believe you could cast anyone else. And to your point, Mimi, this movie originally was going to star a person. Does anyone know who was going to play Barbie?
No.
Amy Schumer.
Amy Schumer.
Amy
What?
Schumer. Thank you. That's the honest reaction I wanted.
We wouldn't be reviewing it right now if that was the case. 'Cause I know I
No, nobody would have seen this movie. This movie would have done 0 ratings. No, it is crazy that was the direction they were thinking of, and that they were. I think that because at that point they didn't know what they had. They were just like, Barbie, who's going to watch this movie? Amy Schumer, maybe it'll be some crazy hijinks comedy. And lo and behold, they cast someone that looks like a Barbie doll, and boom, box office results. So yeah, it's crazy, and I feel like I disagree, maybe to an extent, that Margot Robbie, she has the difficult position of being, in a lot of cases, the straight man, where she's trying not to be like the movie. There's so many times where they write her character to not be the central focus. Anytime that it's like, oh, thank you, Barbie, she's like, it's not about me, it's about you guys. And it kind of robs us of her story, because especially in the third act, it felt like it was more about everybody else. It was more about Ken figuring out who he was, and America Ferrera figuring out who her and her daughter were, and everyone else's journey. And she's just in the middle, kind of making, like, just being the lightning rod. But I thought she did as good as she could have done, based on the fact that she had to kind of just at times be funny, at times be sad, at times be serious. One of the problems with the movie that I have is illustrated in the scene that she has with the old woman at the bench, not the later on in the movie. There's another character, but
at the bus stop.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
sits down. So Barbie this movie is based on the idea that she is a Barbie, and so what could have been funny is that she lives in Barbie world. So anyone who doesn't look like a Barbie or Ken doll is grotesque and ugly. Like, that would have been funny if she is then like the joke, like, make like she doesn't understand like the world she lives in, and then she needs someone like America Ferrera to come along and be like, no, like, this is like a normal thing. So like when she sits down at the bench with the old woman and she's like, you're beautiful, it's like, no. First of all, that woman's 80 years old. She's not beautiful. Now, you can be like, oh, Maverick, you're a piece of shit. But the fact of the matter is, there is beauty in this world that we can all kind of agree on. And Margot Robbie clearly is beautiful. And her being a Barbie would have been funny if she came into that and was like, oh my God, are you dead, Barbie? Like, that would have been funny.
I can see how the humor
would have been funny. And then America Ferrera could be like, no, this isn't like a world of plastic. She's a person with experience. Like, then you could have gotten the moral conundrum. Anyway, that's my little side rail. Ms. Monica Bryant, Margot Robbie, how did you feel about her performance?
I thought she was great. Everything you just said about that bus stop scene, though, hard to disagree.
Yeah, dude, that was such a solid scene.
But Margot Robbie, I mean, she's great in everything. Like, I, Tanya, Wolf of Wall Street, like, she's fantastic. So I think casting her, I can't believe they were going to cast Amy Schumer. That still is like blowing my mind. But she was like the perfect choice for this, especially playing stereotypical Barbie, you know? Like, I really like how they use that as like, you know, I'm stereotypical Barbie. And yeah, she did a great job. She didn't bore me. I wasn't like, I don't believe her as this character. It's very believable as a Barbie. So I thought that was excellent casting.
Yes, Tones.
Oh yeah, she was great. That was a no-brainer. Like, she's great in this movie. In this movie, she's funny when she needs to be funny. She's good and serious and sad, and is like has the great like moments when she needs to have them. I'm not even gonna touch the bus stop scene because that is a 0 out of 10 take right there. That is awful.
Yeah.
What is
Terrible
that?
take. Monica, terrible take. Can't believe you would defend that bus stop scene. Disgusting. Sorry, Tony. What were you saying? I was mansplaining.
Yeah, she gives a grade A performance. I think I do have the same problem that Mav does with her like character arc. Kind of feels like by the second arc of the movie that her character doesn't really go anywhere after that. She's just kind of there as like a way to move the plot forward. She's kind of there as to like help other people with their character arc, which seems weird, but I mean, I don't ever find myself looking at it and being like rolling my eyes and being like, oh yeah, this sucks. She does fine. She does great. I'm gonna put a star next. She does great. A+, definitely A+ performance.
I think she shows pretty good range. Yeah, I was gonna say the only things I've actually seen Margot in are Wolf of Wall Street and Suicide Squad and this movie.
You gotta watch I, Tonya.
I have not seen I, Tonya. So, but I think she shows. I think she's pretty good as Harley, and I think she's pretty good. She's like, that's the thing, is like my feelings on her as Harley mixed. That's another take for another time. But in this movie, I think she shows pretty good range. But yes, she kind of like, yeah, you made a good point that she is there more as like the plot device rather than being the center of the movie. It's really not so much about her and just kind of more of women as, or like, you know, femininity versus the patriarchy as a whole, I guess. But I think I will say we're all going to weigh in on the bus scene. I don't think the scene sucks. It's like a cute little interaction, but it doesn't make any sense why she calls her beautiful. Like, she doesn't call any of the other Barbies beautiful. It's just kind of weird. She just says it like as she's walking away. It's just like, you know, it'd be nice if Barbie says this old lady's beautiful. Aww. Like, that was like how I felt about that scene. I like, it's cute, but it's just a little bit like random, out of place. But yeah, I do think that, yeah, she, yeah, I don't know. I was going to say, other than what you guys have already said, I feel like it's all been said, but I really like Margot in this movie. I have nothing bad to say about her as a character, or her as an individual in this movie.
Yeah, I think she was really good. Let me just backtrack a little and saying she was outshined by Ryan, I think is no discredit to her. I just think that he's like a Dorito and she's like a tortilla chip, where you're like, okay,
Yeah, that's a great analogy.
You know, there's nothing wrong with them. But after you've had a Cool Ranch one, you're like, so that being said, I think she did her job. I think she was super well cast. The only other person I could say who would look as beautiful as her playing Barbie would have been my older sister, Mariah, who has that Barbie-esque look. But I think Margot did a really good job. I think I am hyper cynical of her because I've always had such a deep love for Harley Quinn. So when she was cast at it, I looked at it like under a microscope and was like, not up to my standards. So I think that that's given me like an outlook of like cynical, a little bit cynical outlook towards Margot. But that being said, I think she did a fantastic job. I just think, like you guys have already stated, that maybe the writing or the fact that she was much more of a device for other people's characters to evolve around. All of those things probably just gave her less of that arc, and it was kind of like, I know what to expect, and I got that. With Ryan, I went in knowing what to expect, but got way more, and was like, anyways, we'll get into it. Anyways, I enjoyed Margot very much for what she did, and I guess this is kind of take on the whole movie, but also her. It makes me happy to like see movies that are now that feel slightly old school in the sense of it felt like a musical, which I did not expect this movie to feel like whatsoever. Felt like a musical, and it felt like actors utilizing more than kind of stereotypical acting, which I guess that's kind of even hard to put a label on that. But it felt like she and many of the other actors were doing things out of normal acting character. They were acting. It felt like watching Toy Story. Like, it felt like I was like, oh, Barbie world, and like these are Barbie, so she's acting like a toy if a toy was alive in their own world. Like, there was a lot of elements like that where I'm like, that is interesting. And is it one of those things where it's actually easier because, like, for example, you don't have to make the CGI look real, you can make it look fake? Or is it actually like just as hard to do that and they nailed it? So In any regard, I enjoyed her performance, and I enjoyed the cast. I thought it was well cast for her.
I think when we did the review of the trailer for this, I was like, should I know who Margot Robbie is? I think I said that to you guys, and you guys were extremely like surprised with me because, I mean, she's
disappointed.
Yeah, exactly. I still feel that disappointment on most of these shows when I mix stuff up like that. Yeah.
Oppenheimer.
Yeah, exactly. I almost messed it up again on this one. But I didn't carry much of the Harley Quinn character into this. I actually still was forgetting who she was when I was watching it because, I mean, gorgeous. I'm so sorry to say this in front of my wife, but she was gorgeous in the beginning of it,
gorgeous.
where I didn't think Harley Quinn was gorgeous or any I think other roles. So I was like, this isn't Margot Robbie, just for that extent, And it was so funny how they really played that in the beginning with so much of her and her outfits and body, and how that slowly shifted throughout the movie, where I was totally okay with it. I didn't need her to be the center figure for this whole movie. And I thought she did a good job of starting the movie, starting the story, like getting us on the path of what this story was going to be about, and moving it on to other people. Because, I mean, her the whole time probably wouldn't have been enjoyable or
depthy enough.
Yeah, I mean, she might have been able to carry the movie, but I felt like it was good that we then got this Ken kind of transition. And then we got the mom and the daughter kind of storyline where it's just kind of jumping between all these three. So that did make the 2-hour movie not feel quite as the 2 hours. But she did a great job, actually. It's some of the more emotional scenes. I wouldn't say I almost cried maybe one time.
What?
The bus stop?
No, it was like her with the woman, the older woman, the actress, the Rhea Perlman. Like both the scenes with Rhea Perlman, and Margot. There was the first one where she was in this kitchen, just sipping tea or something like that, and then the second one was with her walking towards the end. It was like the conversations they had and how well it was like this transition of an old way to the new, or it wasn't as so bad as what Barbies were created that everyone's like the little girl just rips into Margot at the lunch table, says so many of those things that we all were like, oh yeah, that's what Barbie did, and her saying that this is what I created this character for none of those reasons. I didn't look like me at all. I wanted to empower women and things. So there's a lot of really cool scenes, and that bus stop scene, I mean, as soon as you started saying it, Mav, I'm like, I like that scene a lot, and I think this is what divides this chat right now will be the bus stop, or maybe moving forward. But no, Margot, surprisingly, once again, I'll say this word a lot, I think throughout this movie did a great job. And I would never have seen her as Barbie being able to pull it off. And she did a great job of it.
We'll get to the MVP, the Gauze, in a minute. Because we all want to talk about the Gauze and give the Gauze his due respect.
Cool Ranch Dorito of the movie.
The Cool Ranch Dorito of the movie. Problem with this movie really boils down to the writing. This movie's a mess. It is trying to be. So you have the story of this movie is that Barbie wakes up and every day is this fanciful, perfect, wonderful day of musicals and hanging out with friends and all of that Barbie stuff. And really, the intro of the movie is done very well, where you can just imagine a little girl holding a Barbie and moving her around and doing all the things that Margot Robbie's doing in the opening scene, like drinking her coffee and eating but not eating, and all of those funny details. And you can imagine how it would just be like a little girl playing in her dollhouse with it. And then she goes through an existential crisis where she's having this big ball, this big to-do, and they're doing a musical number, and all of a sudden she's like, do you guys ever think about death? And then everyone freezes, and then that is the beginning of the story of the movie, is Barbie then venturing out into the real world because she's looking for answers as to who she is, and she's trying to figure out what human is playing with her, because that human is having a problem, who's America Ferrera's daughter. So she goes to the real world, and the writing of this movie, and I feel like this is the biggest problem, is just that it's not very funny. Mm-hmm. The performances are very funny. Like the Gauze is hilarious. It's not really, most of the scenes, it's not what he's saying. It's how he's acting. The look and the movements, and when he's walking through the doors and all of that is really funny. And the costumes, like when he's wearing the Rocky Balboa, like the mink coat, like
God.
that's funny. The colors, like all of the aesthetics are done very well. But the lines in the like it's just not there, and it's written by Greta. I wanted to say Thunberg, but she's writing like the next peace agreement between Greenland and the polar ice caps or something. So I don't know anything about that.
Ice caps.
Greta Gerwig and her husband Noah Baumbach, Dia Baumbach, written by a guy that's done a couple of Wes Anderson movies. They're not very good comedic writers. Like, there's just not that many lines, and there's like 2 or 3 good lines that you see in the trailers. I will say, and I want to know what your guys' favorite line in the movie is. My favorite line in the movie, in fact, is the patriarchy. The scene where Ryan Gosling is talking to the businessman that works for Mattel or whatever, and he's like, "Hi, I'm Ken." He's like, I want to work here. He's like, "Well, do you have an MBA or a PhD or anything?" "No, I'm just a man. I want to work here." And he's just like, "Well, you need one of those things.
Nowadays, you need more of that."
He's like, "Well, clearly you guys aren't doing the patriarchy very good over here."
No, and he's like, "We are, but we're just keeping it a little quieter or something."
A little more sneaky about it.
Or yeah, behind closed
That
doors.
was
Yeah.
so funny.
That was a hilarious line. That was beautifully delivered. But anyway, the story. Let's boomerang it back the other way. Mimi and Jason, Barbie and Ken. How did you guys feel about kind of the story of Barbie and her existential journey? America Ferrera and her daughter being tied up into it. The overall journey of this movie.
I thought it was interesting. Sorry, do you want to start?
No, you go.
Okay. Sorry. I know I'm like blanking here real quick. Just ask the question one more time. Sorry, Rico.
That's all right. So the story of the movie, how did you guys feel about Margot Robbie as Barbie, her stereotypical Barbie, her venture into the real world? Ryan Gosling tags along. They go into the real world, and now it becomes this adventure of Barbie trying to connect with her human, the girl that plays with her, which is America Ferrera's daughter. And meanwhile, Mattel, this evil corporation ran by Will Ferrell, is trying to track them down and put them back in their boxes. And how did you feel about the story? Not necessarily the people or the performances, but the story of the movie.
I think that there's a lot of little things that you could like gravitate towards and be like, oh, I really, like for me personally, I really enjoy the deeper meaning behind like this scene or this relationship or whatever. If I'm to back it up more and look at like the overall writing and story, not that impressive, not that inspiring, but I think that there's things within the story. Like, I think it resonated with me and probably many people where Barbie wakes up, and it's kind of similar to like maybe a spiritual awakening or like, you know, whatever sort of awakening somebody's having. And all of a sudden, like, you no longer fit in with everybody around you, or so what seems everybody around you. So I really like the scene of like, have you guys been thinking about death? And then like cut, because that felt very real to society, where you bring something up that's like deeper than a puddle and people are like, like nobody talk about it. And everybody's like really uncomfortable and they look at her as like something's wrong. So I really enjoyed that aspect of her waking up, or whatever you want to call it. So like I said, I think stories within the story moved me more than the overall story did, because I thought that the mom and daughter duo were slightly annoying and kind of like unmoving. I don't know how else to say throughout it. But then the mom kind of grew on me, and like the relationship slightly started to grow on me a little bit throughout it. But yeah, I would say that like overall, that's how I would describe it, is that it didn't super inspire me and it was slightly predictable. I'll say that the writing and the actual story of it, to me, were not my favorite parts of the movie. Not at all. So, yeah.
Yeah, no, that's a lot of good points. And it was probably what I was thinking about the most driving to the movie. Is like, what am I actually seeing? Because I think that was the most confusing part about this when we saw the first preview for it, and then we started seeing the second and third, that every preview that I saw for this movie, it showed it as a different movie. The first one that we saw was just the Barbie world. We didn't see any of the Will Ferrell stuff. We saw none of the real world stuff after the first preview. So we're sitting there thinking it's all going to be in this Barbie world kind of thing. Some adventure is going to take place in there. And then us seeing the real world stuff. I'm like, this is going to be the fucking Lego movie, again, but just through a different lens. I thought exactly it was going to be that, especially when Will Ferrell was casted as a CEO figure again. And then it's like, I was like, oh God, is this what I'm going to go see? And then, getting there and seeing it was walking that line very well, where it was, you brought up a really good point, Maverick, and I didn't really think about it until you said it, but it was very messy. And now when you say about how some of the writers were people who didn't do comedic writers, but this hit home emotionally because they weren't comedic writers, and then they played on the goofy actors to fill in the kind of funny part of this, because the only way this movie was going to work is it didn't take itself seriously. I think they thought about maybe doing this as more of a Lego movie was not the right route, and then I keep thinking about every edition of 80s toys, because remember, all of these are 80s toys, the Transformers and Ninja Turtles, all the stuff that we're getting to come out, and especially those two movies, we're getting story about the character, what made Optimus Prime him, or how the Turtles actually became the Turtles. We don't need to know how Barbie became Barbie, or how Barbie met Ken, or something like that. I'm sure there's a cartoon our daughter has watched where Barbie met Ken as kids, or something like that. This was exploring what the toys meant to girls, I guess, how do we actually write a story about that? And so if that was the actually message of what this was, I think they did a much better job than I ever expected them to do with it. So hard task to try to take some product like this and actually say an emotional story over it, and then make it silly at the same time, and have some actors be able to really show their worth in some of these roles. So honestly, it's never going to be a top 10 as far as stories, but I was pleasantly surprised once again with this movie and what it pulled off, what it was trying to do.
I also want to add, I think it's admirable that they addressed the fact of how damaging Barbie has been on society and on women, and to come out on the other end of them basically doing a confessional about that, and you're not left with it being a negative thing, because you kind of are given that human compassionate feeling of oh, but it's not what she intended it to be. And regardless of any damage done, and I'm not saying that even to be negative about it, but it's regardless of anything that's been done, it's not what she intended it to be, and what she intended it to be and was empowering. And therefore, now that we move along with that information, you have a different compassion feeling towards it. So I thought that was actually a very cool thing that they did work into the story. And like you said, the comedic actors adding that to it. I'm sure we'll get into it, but Kate McKinnon, oh my God. Love
Terrible,
her.
I know. Awful.
Love her.
Oh, man.
I love her with every fiber of my being.
Absolutely. Just as soon as she's on screen, I'm like, we're going to get an unfunny SNL performance. Just like every SNL.
Did. We are all having the exact opposite the thoughts that Mav has.
Oh my God, is she not funny?
Anyways, continue on.
Tones, go for it.
Oh, but she asked him. She just said she's like, go first. So I was like, all right, I'll go first. Okay. This movie is a wannabe Lego movie, so I am a little bit bummed that Jason beat me to the punch on this, because I had already that was my feeling of this movie, was toy, discovering who he is, like an iconic classic toy. Discovering who he is. Will Ferrell is evil Lord Business. He gets transported out of his world. Literally every single beat they just took from the Lego movie, and are let's do that. But overall, as a story, it's just messy. It doesn't do any one thing super well. I like, I was gonna say, if you're talking about just the story, because I like the visuals of Barbie Land and the beach off and the fight at the end with the two.
Yeah.
Borderline, the best part was the West Side Story with Gosling.
Yes. The dance off, there's all those little things are really funny and really enjoyable. But as far as the actual the story arc, Will Ferrell meeting him and then having him chase Barbie to the end to do nothing is this huge waste of time. Like, you could have had him go and meet, and then she runs off, and that's it. But no, like, they add in these scenes of him chasing her down just to get to the end to do nothing. It was just this weird, like, and there's some things.
And Will Ferrell, they're going to use him.
Yes, no, for sure. They were like, I don't know what the pay was like, but I'm sure they were paying him well. But I think, so it's like, overall, I like the little elements. There's some elements within it that I like, but overall, it doesn't really flow that well. And it's what needs to be said is this is a Mattel movie. So they're not going to paint the actual negative image of Barbie being like, hey, we're a company that gives women negative self-image, or negative images of themselves. That's not the actual moral of the story. The moral of the story is down to the patriarchy, which is fine, but it's just funny because it's like how, like, if you're in Mattel and you're like, everybody basically feels this way, like Barbie sets an unrealistic standard for women. Everybody understands that, I think, and have for a while. So you're going to make, but it's like, so now it's ironic that they make a movie that doesn't actually put them in and the moral of the story is not putting them in a negative light. They kind of twist it, and it was just funny. But anyway, basically a messier, not as good Lego movie.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to touch too much on what everyone else says. Like, the movie has hiccups along the line. It feels kind of choppy. I do like that, so the movie, like you guys said, doesn't have comedic writers, which is why they needed to have, like, a great performance out of their actors, and they did. But the emotional parts that they did, like, they obviously put a lot of work into that. They didn't put too much work into that. Side note, the joke about the fascists and the train thing, I don't know if I'm the only person who got that it's kind of freaking hilarious. Like,
wait, okay, so Monica and I were talking about this. We were bedazzled. Tell us, Tony, what is going on?
So the joke is, the Italian fascist guy, Mussolini, he obviously was a fascist, but his one thing was that the trains have to come on time. So he was, like, beheading people if the train showed up late. So that's why she was like, I don't know if he was beheading people, but it was like a bad government thing. He was like, the trains must run on time. And so when she's just like, but I don't even make the trains come on time. Like, that one got a good one out of me. Like, that was pretty funny.
Look at the big brains on Tone.
Yeah. So, like, I was just like, that one got it. Like, that got a chuckle out of me. And I think, like, Rihanna, like, me and Rihanna looked at each other. We're like, okay. But, like, it doesn't do anything super, like he said, it doesn't do anything super well, but it doesn't do anything, like, horrible enough to where I walked out of that movie and I'm like, oh, this is gross. Again, like, I feel like if we didn't have Will Ferrell in this movie would probably be 30 minutes shorter. Which, not saying he did bad, but, like, he was just there. Like, I can't remember, like, any of the scenes. Like, there was a couple weird scenes where they, like, were talking about, like, if they were going to keep Barbie World the way it was because, like, the dolls were selling, which I don't know where they were supposed to go with that. Like, the patriarchy sells. Like, was that supposed to be, like, the message of that?
The Scooby-Doo face with Will Ferrell, like that one, I was just like, I cannot believe this is going on right now.
So weird. But it's like, it's like he was just there, and, like, he gives a fine performance. But again, like, if you watch Lego Movie, you already seen this Will Ferrell. You don't need to see it again. Other than that, like, I did really like the mother-daughter duo. Like, when I first met them, it was annoying, and then, like, they kind of really grew on me towards the end. I'm like a sucker for, like, the really, like, emotional, like, the montages, like, at the end, and, like, when, like, America's, like, playing with her, like she's, like, talking about her daughter and stuff. I'm a sucker for it. Like, I love stuff like that. I'm a sap.
Waterworks, dude. God,
I wasn't crying.
I wasn't deeply sobbing.
I wasn't crying. It was like, it got, like, a couple tears out of me, so.
I was close a couple times. Hey, it's okay.
The last scene really got me. I was like, oh my God. So, other than that, like, it's not a bad movie. Again, like, I wouldn't rewatch it.
Yeah.
I'm never going to be like, hey man, fire up Barbie. But, like, I'm not going to, it's not a terrible movie, so.
Brian.
Me? There was a couple of scenes that I liked. I love how the movie opens. I mean, paying homage to 2001: A Space Odyssey, I was like, oh my god, it was my favorite.
I'm
I thought it was brilliant.
I'm so glad you said that, because ashamedly admitting that I haven't seen Space Odyssey yet. Are you talking about the baby scene? Dolls?
Yeah, all little girls are playing with baby dolls. And then
Oh,
Barbie shows up and she's like this giant, she's supposed to be like the giant monolith that the apes are like, what is this thing? And I was
Oh,
like, oh my God, this is so cool. And I thought I had like high expectations for the movie after that, because I was like, you can't open like that and then suck. But there was parts where it just kind of lulled, you know. Another scene I enjoyed is when they get to the real world and Barbie's like, we need to find some women. Let's go to a construction site.
yes.
Oh, God. And then they're like hitting on her or whatever. And she's like, well, I don't have a vagina. And he doesn't have a
So funny.
And like, you would think the construction guys are going to do some like anti-trans, like, ew. But they're just like, oh, that's cool. Like, whatever. Like, they were unfazed. And I was like, okay, wasn't expecting that. That's cool. Someone said earlier, like, there's no one thing the movie does well. Like, it's kind of like a mishmash of things put together, and there's points I can pick and choose. Like, oh yeah, I like that part. I was surprised at how I didn't really enjoy Kate McKinnon as much as I was hoping I was going to, because I've seen her skits on SNL, like snippets, and I think she's really funny. But like, I don't know, she just wasn't really bringing it, in my opinion. Cause like she puts on she's dressed up as weird Barbie with her hair cut off and all that. And you know, I had weird Barbies when I
I
was
am weird Barbie. I finally had a Barbie I relate to. I'm not even kidding. I've never related to a Barbie. And when she was on, I was like, yep, that's me. Her like weird splits all the time and like being awkward. I can see how it could fall flat, but it also cracked me up. Like her face, like I borderline wanted to draw on my face before this. Just I was like,
I don't know. I felt like she was like trying to make the costume do all the work or something. Like it just wasn't really feeling it. But I thought there was, you know, definitely great moments. The Mojo Jojo Casa house is so stupid, but like I laughed at that because it's just so dumb. It's so dumb. I was like, what?
And the next scene is it's flying off the shelves, all the boxes, the warehouse can't keep enough of them, like it's the next hot toy.
this isn't your house anymore, Barbie. The Kendom. It's so funny. Yeah.
One thing I want to piggyback off that real quick is I think it's another part of this movie and the story that we kind of missed because we didn't collect Barbies. Like, so I collected Star Wars figures as a kid. So I knew like little things like, oh, the Yoda with the white jacket was rare or something like that. Well, there's probably so many parts to this movie where it was like that rare Barbie in the back, which you talked about. Or I did some research. The first Barbie was 1959, the black and white bathing suit one.
Her opening outfit.
Yeah, and that's the first thing. So there's probably so many parts of this movie that the collectors or the
was fanship.
The fandom would have picked up on. So it's like a whole another element to that movie that was kind of lost.
Yeah, like I remember that pregnant Barbie.
Yes,
I had that too.
When I was a kid.
Weird. It was so weird.
It was very weird.
Very squishy belly.
And it was like
The
squishy.
baby would be in there.
You take the belly off?
And there was a baby in there, dude. It was so freaking weird.
What?
It was so weird.
Oh.
And I had previously heard about the Barbie with the growing boobs, where it raised its arm and the boobs would grow bigger on the Barbie. Like I remember hearing about that, you know, as far as like a collector's world, that being a expensive
silly.
Barbie, and they addressed that shit in there. So like, that was a whole other element to the movie.
I do want to say the whole. I mentioned this to Monica earlier. Jason brought up the whole. We don't know what it's like because there's the Barbie dolls, and then you collected action figures. I do find it hilarious that at some point in America history they defined No, no, no. There's dolls for girls, and aren't these dolls for boys? These dolls for Star Wars? No, no, no. These are action figures. Thus spawned the whole action figure for boys thing, because it is funny. I'm just like, they literally just came up with action
Yeah.
figures.
Well,
When
all
you
of them
say
had
that, you have to say it in like Ben Shapiro's voice. Like, no, 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 no. These are action figures.
That they tried to feminize the action figure into a doll. It's not a doll. It's not a doll. And
Well, if any Barbies could do the karate chop, then they'd be action figures. All the male toys had karate chop abilities,
That's
so
true.
action is, of course, can be in the name.
So there is specifically two scenes that were absolutely cringeworthy, and I think we all know what those scenes are. I feel like this is not controversial, unlike the bench scene. Apparently, I'm just
We're not
demon over here thinking the bench scene was cringe, but this movie's goofy. But then it takes itself very seriously when the daughter is at the school and she just spews at Barbie about how you have set unrealistic expectations for women, but blah 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 blah. And to that, I have to say, I believe in women way more than this movie does. This movie apparently believes that women as a species took one look at Barbie and were like aghast, like, oh my God, I'll never measure up to the Barbie. I can't make it in life. It's too hard. Like, seriously, like this would be like me, 5'8" me. Like if I was like, my parents were like, here, play with Luke Skywalker, who has a 12-pack in the action figure version. And I just be like, I can't give me Warwick Davis, please. I can't back Luke Skywalker.
Well, let me.
Then there was the speech of speeches, which we can touch on in a minute. Go ahead, Mimi.
I just want to say, even though I felt that specific scene was poorly given, in the sense that everything she says, I don't disagree with, but coming from her at that age in that scenario doesn't make any sense. Really, the writing's just a little bit too mature for her. And I think, though, what the real inference to societal damage that Barbie has done is more of a subconscious, not like nobody playing with a Barbie girls would be like, oh, I can't measure up. But it's more of a subconscious thing of like, this is what the perfect woman looks like. Mentally, that's what people thought. And therefore, that's why it was damaging. And that's, I think, what her speech is inferring is like, this has been a stereotypical Barbie, stereotypical woman that no woman actually has these measurements, or actually has this look, or whatever. Is this flawless or whatever? So that's not to like take it 0 to 100, but I think that's the inference on her talking about how it's been damaging or whatever. But not to dissuade from, I think it's unrealistic writing for a kid her age. And I thought it was cringy setup of like, ooh, yeah, destroy her. Like,
The other girls stopped.
it's so
Yeah.
embarrassing. You're just like, oh yeah, because this is the school badass. Like the girl that's like, evanescence, like, feed me, like, my soul. Like, no, it's just like, and Barbie, that was a part where I was like, even if it isn't unrealistic writing, the character Barbie, I guess I would have hoped she would have had more to say back to a child who was being bratty. But maybe she's more like tuning into, or maybe they were tuning into the fact that she's still a doll. She's somehow not as human as humans. She's more like a child, or like a child's toy. So yeah, it's kind of interesting. Anyways, sorry. Didn't mean to rabbit hole that.
No, I think, like, just a quick segue. I think mostly they made her do it because it's like when you're a teenager and you feel like you know everything, that's exactly how you would say it to, like, you know what I mean? Like 13, I don't know how old the kid is, like 13-year-old, 14-year-old who thinks that they know everything about the world, who like has some buzzwords that they learned on the internet, and they're going to show everybody how freaking cool I am because look at all these words I know and you suck. And it's just like, it's prime 13-year-old. That's what a 13-year-old wants to do. They want to be able to like tell some grown up off, like using some words
for sure.
Yeah, using some fancy words to show how grown up and mature they are. And so like that tracks. And I think we all cringe because like I think we all can remember kind of being in that situation of like wanting to do that, and you're just like, ew, is that how I would have sounded? Gross. Grody. Like, what is that? So I think like it does what it's supposed to. I think that's one of those things that you put in, and you like, either you're 13-year-old and you're like, oh, that's cool, or you're like, you're my age and you're like, oh man, geez, Christ.
And the other part of that had to be addressed in the movie. We talked about that earlier. Like, they had to get that out there at some point throughout the movie. Yeah, that message. So how were they going to deliver it? And yeah, maybe she wasn't the best choice, but
terribly, apparently, is how they were going to deliver it.
Yeah.
I didn't understand, like, America Ferrera and her daughter. I didn't understand their characters anymore when suddenly the dad showed up and there's a husband and he's like weirdly learning Spanish. And I didn't get it after that, because the movie made me think that she was a single mom who's like raising her daughter, and she's like is working all the time, and maybe their relationship is fractured somehow because she's working all the time. But then she magically had a dad, and I was like, what? It didn't make any sense.
That's the first thing we said to each other after the movie. We're like, I did not understand the dad and why she was so upset with her mom.
Yeah, like, why was she so, like, I get that teenagers can go through that, but they should have either given a little backstory, like, she blames her mom for her dad leaving, who, surprise, never left. But whatever it was, they should have given a little context to why she was so bratty. Like, it's not unrealistic, but the mom was always just like, it was like the mom always trying and the daughter just like apprehensive. So yeah, I thought they should have given that a little more context. Yeah.
The the whole dad thing, he's just shoehorned in there. They show a brief scene of him earlier speaking Spanish, and then the whole point of him is just to shoehorn a joke at the very end of the movie about how he's trying to speak Spanish, and then his daughter's like, "Oh, you're appropriating." We watched this with a mostly Latino crowd. Not one person made any audible chuckle, noise. It was like, this is the most white person writes, white guy does awkward thing like with Spanish, and it did not land with Latino people whatsoever in our theater. I will throw it to Remy in a second. I want to now, my favorite part of the movie is the fact that America Ferrera gives a impassioned speech. A speech to rile up the women of the world and to say we're not going to take it anymore. And I have this speech right here, in fact. So...
Are you going to read the whole thing?
You need to read the whole thing.
I'm going to read the first part of the thing. And so bear with me for 1 second. So in this scene, America Ferrera is telling Barbie, who is now flat on her face, being like, I can't do it. And in Star Wars, Ben Kenobi's just like, Luke, stop being a bitch. Get up. Come to Dagobah. And in this scene, words that Obi-Wan is going to tell Luke how hard it is to be a Jedi and complain. And that's America Ferrera in this. So anyway.
Wow, a Star Wars comparison to Barbie.
It's disgraceful. I never should have done it. I beg for forgiveness. Anyway, Margot Robbie says, it is literally impossible to be a woman. You are so beautiful. You are so smart. And it kills me that you don't think you're good enough. Like, we have to always be extraordinary. But somehow, we're doing it wrong. You have to be thin, but not too thin. And you can never say you want to be thin. You have to say you want to be healthy, but also you have to be thin. You have to have money, but you can't ask for money because that's crass. You have to be a boss, but you can't be mean. You have to lead, but you can't squash other people's ideas. You're supposed to love being a mother, but don't talk about your kids all the damn time. You have to be a career woman, but also always be looking out for other people. You have to answer for men's bad behavior, which is insane. But if you point that out, you're accused of complaining. You're supposed to stay pretty for men, but not so pretty that you tempt them too much or threaten any other woman because you're supposed to be part of the sisterhood. So
that's only like an eighth of the actual speech.
That is an eighth of the actual speech. So bear with me. I played a little bit of Mad Libs and I translated this because I feel like this speech, you can literally just make complaints about being a woman, being a man, the hard parts of life, the hard parts of fucking life, where you just gotta fucking deal with the bullshit that you're given, and women are given a lot of bullshit that they gotta deal with. But this scene really, I felt like, was not empowering. It was just bitching. So I took a male example of a man complaining about what it must be like to be a man. And to me, both are equally ridiculous. So it is literally impossible to be a man. You are so handsome and so intelligent. And it kills me that you don't think you're good enough. Like, we have to always be extraordinary, but somehow we're always doing it wrong. You have to be strong, but not too strong. And you can never say you want to be rich. You have to say you want to be successful.
Oh my God.
But also, you have to be rich. You have to have money, but you can't ask for money because you will be considered a bum. You have to be a boss, but you can't sexually harass your subordinates. You have to lead, but you can't squash other people's ideas. You're supposed to love being a father, but don't talk about your damn kids all the time. You have to be a career man, but also always be taking care of your wife's needs. You have to answer for women's bad behavior, which is insane. But if you point that out, you're accused of complaining. You're supposed to keep good hygiene for women, but not too good that you tempt them too much or that you threaten other men because you're supposed to be a part of the brotherhood.
Oh my God, that's so good. I wish I was with that.
That was very good. That was very good.
Oh my
Oh shit, that was funny.
All thanks to Monica. I was we on the remarks from the theater, leaving the theater. I was just being like, you could literally do that speech and just be bitching and complaining like a man, and we were bouncing ideas off each other. And she is the one that encouraged me to follow my doing the spin-off of that speech. Anyway, I've talked way too much.
All of our women subscribers, so thank you.
That's so.
Anyway, the point is that the speeches were ridiculous. Anyway, I'm sorry I've talked too much. Ms. Bryan, your thoughts on America Ferrera's speech and the morals of the movie, trying to encourage women and all that stuff.
I just thought the speech was like very cringe. It just felt misplaced. Like I could see it working maybe in a different context, but I was just sitting there the whole time she was talking, like, okay, like, okay. Like, yes, I get it, and nothing she said was wrong, and I don't disagree, but it was just like, I don't know. There was something just very grating about the whole thing, and I was like, okay, is it over yet? Is she done? She talked for a really long time. But yeah, when we left the theater and then Maverick was like, oh yeah, I could say the reverse of that. He was just saying all this funny shit and it was just so hilarious. So, I don't know, we have a morbid sense of humor.
all those horror films you watch that really get that sense of humor out of you.
Yes, those excellent horror movies developed by horror filmmakers that are trying to make it in the world, which some people on this stream don't appreciate.
Well, if they're poor, then they better stay that way and decrease the surplus population.
Ooh, so many good references. Wow. It's a quote there.
Oh, Lord God, dude, I was dying during this speech. Oh, my God. Just because, yeah, again, we're all going to basically say the same thing. Nothing is actually technically wrong with what she said. But the big thing that this was missing was it's all tell, no show. Barbie doesn't have any hardships when she goes to the human world. If you showed her going through and experiencing some of the basic hardships that, like, other than getting briefly hit on by some construction workers, she doesn't actually have any hardships that a normal woman would face. and neither does any woman actually in this movie. So it doesn't land when you're just like, oh yeah, see all the hard things that women have to deal with, and then you just say it as you're like, yeah, we just saw that. That makes sense. And then you can like kind of complete the story like that. Not at all. Barbie doesn't have any sort of real hardship other than she gets chased around a building sillily by Will Ferrell and company, and then makes it back. And then it's not even her that gives the speech. It's America, who also didn't have to deal with anything hard through the movie. So it's so out of place. It's so out of place that it's just like, again, they just wrote this diatribe. This very long. I mean, you could have cut that thing in half and it still would have been long. And that's just, yeah, God. I mean, that speech, but not to just talk about that speech, because I don't think we need to all just go to the very depths of that speech. But just like my last kind of thoughts of the movie and what I think the parts and this speech does kind of tie into it as far as what doesn't make a whole lot of sense is Barbies are way more intelligent than they should be. They live in a world where nothing happens. They're a doctor, but they don't obviously perform surgeries.
Get sick, yeah.
There's cooks and chefs, but there's nobody actually eats real food. And there's a president, but no real form of government. So it's like, but they talk in a way where they use very, they'll use sophisticated. Yes, I'm not obviously sophisticated enough to think of the word sophisticated. I have Tony here for that. But yeah, they use very sophisticated conversation, and it's just like one of those things where I was just like, this doesn't fit. And I feel like this speech is the same way. I'm like, why do you like, and that's the thing is when they get to the end of the movie and they're like, yeah, you're a doctor. Yeah, you're a chef. I'm like, but you're actually still not. You're actually nothing. You are dolls and you literally don't do anything. So it's a little bit odd, and I just, yeah. So that's kind of the last kind of thoughts I have about the speech and the movie in general.
Imagination. They imagine that they can do it, so it happens. Obviously, guys, come on. Yeah. My thing when I thought about it, I was thinking about it, and I'm like, I would not be surprised if the speech is the first thing they wrote from the movie, and then like they got to the end of writing it, and they were like, this speech has to go somewhere because it's like a great feminist speech. Got to put it somewhere. Again, nothing's technically wrong with the movie, and I mean with the speech. And I guess like if you want to say she didn't go through any hardships, I mean she was having like the whole existential crisis and like she was getting cellulite and stuff like that. But it was like not super to the point. Like it wasn't super. Like we didn't see her life be changed by the fact that she was like having these existential crises. Again, we didn't really see too much of her. We just kind of we got her and went on with our lives. But yeah, other than that, like using the speech as kind of like the crux of the movie, where they kept repeating it, it got worse every single time they repeated it. I'm like, you could have broke that up and then just used it. If we were gonna say the same thing 8 times, Jesus Christ, guys! By like the third Barbie, I was like, okay, let's go, let's get it through. But yeah, I just think that they wrote the speech, someone looked at it and they were like, fuck yeah, we gotta use this. This is it. This is gonna win us our freaking Oscar and we're gonna stick with it. Like I bet like they felt like when they were like recording it, they were like, yeah. It's weird. It doesn't come off the way it was like supposed to. And it ties back to the other parts where it's like that was one of the things that literally took me out, where I was just like, huh? Like, I thought they were just gonna go with something else of like, whatever. It just, yeah, it's like one of those. It's like a conversation that you have with your calling, and you're just like, yeah, this is like my life fucking sucks right now. And then, but it's like there's no like part at the end where you're like, but it's all great because we're women and da da da. It's just life sucks. You're a girl. What are you gonna do about it? We're gonna tell everybody that life sucks. Where's like the moral of the speech? Like, where's the girl power thing? It just doesn't feel right, personally.
Plus, I feel like nobody powerful ever has to state they are. And it's like that to me, throughout the whole speech, I was like, demeaning, because you shouldn't have to state like, women have value. Like, yeah, of course, duh, like, of course. So some of those things I was like, yeah, you're reaching way too far and keeping it too long to like project this message. And like you said, there was no rebound to like full circle of like, but it was just kind of, yeah, it was just kind of silly.
The cringiest part to me was not necessarily that speech, because it was the consecutive speeches to the Barbies afterwards, where they were like winning over the girls from the guys under the spell. Like that whole kind of angle of it was so fucking ridiculous to me and so demeaning to just men and women, where it's like they can trick women into getting you beers, you know, and that they enjoy that lifestyle better than being a president. It's like, oh yeah, this is great. I don't have to think for myself anymore, and all I have to do is just get beers from this man. I'm like, this is happening right now.
Yeah, right, like slightly demeaning almost.
I was really like taken back. I'm like, oh shit, they're kind of saying this on TV, and then like, I mean, of course, I can see what they're trying to do. Where it's like, but like men, like putting these women under spells, like they had some power to it. Like that's what got me. And then like them easily saying just some one-liner, like "You're powerful and beautiful woman." Oh, I snapped right out of it. I can't believe I was under the spell for so long. I'm like, Jesus Christ. But at the same time, guys, we are looking into this way too much. This is the Barbie movie, and I know that they had some like feminist things and like empowering stuff, but we are going a little deep on the messages of this movie, where we didn't feel like we wasted money at watching this, and I think that's the bar that we need to set this movie at.
That's a good point. The movies that I've seen this year where I came out of it being like, I wasted my fucking money. Like, this is not one of them.
We talked about Transformers, you know, and I even was like, yeah, that this was probably a better experience. I even said that to me, was like, I bet this was a better experience for you guys than Transformers, you know, and I'm glad we were talking about this, you know, for over an hour and having a good time. But man, I didn't feel like I wasted money. I enjoyed my hot dog. I had my lunch in the theater, and I came out to, I guess, a better man now. I guess, yeah,
better man.
Better this movie is
Jason
woke me.
Come on,
please do tell.
Yes.
What's line?
Say your favorite line of the movie.
Oh, you are Kenneth.
What?
Oh,
your
shirt.
Kenneth.
The shirt.
So
You're
good.
enough. The Kenneth one.
So
Yeah.
good.
No, that's right. My favorite line. I was thinking about it, and there's probably a couple, but the one that came out to me most was, as soon as I figured out horses weren't part of patriarchy, I kind of lost interest.
That's my favorite line. That was my favorite line, dude. I love that somehow we flipped horses into being a masculine thing. I was growing up. It was always
like a girl thing.
It was a girl thing for sure.
The horse girls.
My Little Pony.
Yeah, literally My Little Pony. Like, I mean, it's always been a girl thing, and then they just make it man. I was like, yeah, man, horses, big cocks.
Oh my God.
Horse cock. That's exactly what it was.
Yeah. So final thoughts and ratings. We did not dedicate a specific portion of this to talk about the gauze, but I feel like the gauze will be a part of all of our final thoughts.
Yes.
So I will save that for this portion. I will say my other favorite line was Will Ferrell. The line of his that I thought was really funny was when at the end of the movie, when it's like, you know, we want to create a doll that's like not unrealistic and that's for everyone and represents every woman and it's just a normal doll. There's nothing special. It's just normal. And he's like, that is a terrible idea. And he says, oh, it'll make a lot of money. He's like, oh, it's a wonderful idea. Great line. This movie is a 5 out of 10. It's just, it wasn't like I give a 5 out of 10 to Spider-Verse because I was in pain watching Peter Parker get crucified in that movie. But that was like pain. This movie wasn't pain. It was just meh. I did have a few times where I just chuckled and laughed, which was a surprise to me. I do think it's a movie that if you're a girl, you got to see it because maybe it'll speak to you. For dudes like me, I'd be like, watch Oppenheimer again. That's a movie you want to watch again. But yeah, 5 out of 10. Barbie, married Barbie and Ken. What were your ratings and final thoughts about the movie? And the gauze was great, of course.
You want to go first?
Yeah. I will also give it a 5 out of 10. I might go 6 out of 10, actually. I'll give it a 6 out of 10. I liked it. I feel like a couple things I wanted to say just about random characters. Will Ferrell, I will say that this movie to me felt like Buddy the Elf took over his dad's company and expanded. That's what I thought about it. I was like, that's Will Ferrell's character, where it's like he's this like fun-loving guy, but with like a corporate like darkness following him. I'm like, dude, it's like Buddy the Elf became his corporate dad. I liked that. Gosling was hilarious and off the charts good. I definitely felt that they were channeling like Jake Paul or who is the other person that I was like, oh, I wrote it down. Oh, or Machine Gun Kelly. I was like, that is what he looks like when he's all like fur coat action and all of that. Like that really was funny to me. I loved his performance. He was so funny. And, you know, I've never been a female who's like, Ryan Gosling. Like, I just, like, yeah, he's not, but now that he's getting a little bit older, I'm like, oh yeah, cool. I can dig this Gosling far more. I think he's very cool. I was getting, final thoughts, just saying overall, I was getting a little bit of like his come off of La La Land, where it's like he's so much more than just like, I think we can say like Hemsworth, for example. I know you all are big fans and everything. I've never been a big Chris Hemsworth fan, not for the acting, but just I think that his looks are so expounded upon, and I've never been that attracted to him. But Gosling, similar but different, where I'm like, everyone's always raved about him, but now I really feel like, whoa, you are diversified so much more than a Chris Hemsworth, so much more than even a Aquaman, Momoa. Like Gosling now, to me, I'm like, whoa, you can do it all. You can do the singing, dancing. You can do the serious kind of like Beyond the Pines type.
Yes, Place Beyond the Pines. Thank you. Yeah. Great shout out. One of my favorite Ryan Gosling performances. He's so good.
Introduced him to his wife, right? Longoria. They met in that film. So anyways, but he can do a lot. And this movie really impressed me with him specifically. Final thought on the whole movie. Elements I liked. Like I said, 5, 6 out of 10. Not bad, not crazy great though. But I really enjoyed how it was a new, just kind of like when Sin City came out and it was like a new style of movie. This is like that. There were elements that felt almost Roger Rabbit-y, where it was like cartoony style things or sound effects or animations. But then it never so much that you felt like you were watching a kid's movie. It still, to me, felt like an adult movie. It was enjoyable, a little too long. Great cast, though. Worth seeing one time. No. Those are my final thoughts.
You got to give an official rating.
Oh, I said, yeah. Okay. 6 out of 10.
6 out of 10. Okay. Oh, sorry. All right.
I came home and started writing notes about the movie, and it was more about the characters in the movie for me. You know, it's like the story and everything what was great, but some of the actors are what really carried this for me. And it's interesting that you just said about Gosling kind of breaking out from some of the roles, but I felt so much La La Land to this, especially with so much of the dance numbers and kind of the singing stuff. But of course, him being such a different kind of character person, you know, in this, but the style of how he was in La La Land transferred, I feel like a lot to
bit,
this. Yeah. But I mean, and I remember this being some of the things when the first preview for Barbie came out, that it was Helen Mirren doing the narration to this.
That's where
and Helen Mirren, you know, is like this extremely dignified British actress. You know, it's like, I think it's The Crown or one of those Downton Abbey or something is what she is. She is this British narration voice as the movie's starting, you know, or I think it's the scene that you were talking about, Monica, with
the dolls.
Yeah, but I think it's another point where she's narrating it, and it's like little things like that were such cool parts of this movie to me. Like, and then John Cena being a merman, you know, and then like all this, the real Pearlman, you know, it's like I loved every scene that she was in, you know. I get these Cheers vibes, you know, from her, from that time, the time frame of her acting. And then the Kingsley Ben Adir was one of the Kens, you know. He barely had any lines, but he's the bad guy in Secret Invasion right now. So it's so interesting to see a different role for him so close. It was like so many of the characters in this movie were just such different versions of what I've seen a lot of these people in. I mean, Simu Liu, you know, this is a Marvel, you know, a superhero, you know, being a Ken, you know, and being that was another one of my favorite lines too, is when Ken's talking to Barbie about how he thinks that other Ken, he cares about his opinion. He's like, he's not that cool. He's like, well, I think he is. You know, he has put this other Ken on such a high pedestal, and it being Simu Lee is really
and their West Side Story moment, when they're dancing, it was that was my favorite part,
because how the whole fight translation or evolves into a dance number, you know, it's like that all these Kens come together, you know, and it was, and so many actors like Michael Cera. I mean, I talk so much shit about him. I do not like him in a lot of movies, but he was so good as what he was in this, that annoying guy. I mean, when he popped up in the back seat at the very end because he thought he was finally escaping, and only to be brought right back, you know, and it was, I mean, and Sarah's just so sold that role where it's like, after, you know, seeing this, I'm like, I can't picture another person, you know, as playing that character, but that was the big kicker for this movie for me, was so many of these actors just playing some like funny different roles. So honestly, I give this a 7. You know, I would recommend this to people. It's funny. It's a good time. Like, if all 6 of us went to this theater and saw it at the same time, we'd have a great time. If none of us had ever seen it and we see it come on in the future, we'd all sit around, drink some beers, and laugh and watch this movie. So it's a good movie for what it is. And we are not the demographic, and I think we're putting it on way too high of a pedestal. So for what it is, it does a great job for what it is. So it's a solid 7 in my opinion.
Michael Cera sucks, and he always will. Go ahead, Tones.
I like it. He look weirder than he normally does.
Yeah,
I like that. The darker eyes.
Yeah.
I got Alan vibes.
So,
I'm gonna give this movie 6.5. It's probably one of the funnier movies that I've seen. It's one of the few movies where I've watched it in the movie theaters and I've laughed at least over 5 times, and so that's worth the price. That's worth the price of admission for me. Just laughing, like going into it knowing that it's gonna be a silly, goofy movie. I think, it's if you like it so much that you want to go rewatch it, like, I'm not gonna judge you for it, but I'm never just gonna be scrolling on like whatever streaming service it goes to and be like, oh, I just really feel the urge to watch Barbie. That's not probably what I'm gonna do. But I like how like serious and like how like when you think about it, like, I don't know if you guys like recognize the thing where it's just like, can I say it, when Ken's like, can I stay over tonight? And she's like, and do what? And he's like, because we're girlfriend boyfriend. And I'm just like, and it's funny because like when you're playing with like dolls as a kid, you know that like boyfriend and girlfriend stay over, but you have no idea what they do when they stay over. So it's just like, what are we gonna do all night? And he's just like, well, we're supposed to stay over because we're girlfriend boyfriend. And that was just like a really funny part. Like, I feel like the people who watch this movie, like I say this a lot, like when movies are made with love, like you can tell like when like someone actually cares about the movie that they're making and they're putting a lot of work in it, for better or worse. Like, someone cared to write that speech, for better or worse, you know. Terrible speech, but somebody cared to write it. And so like it just shows in other parts of the movies, like the humor and like just the acting choices or the actors that they made. I know Greta was super like, she wanted the people that she wanted and she was not going to make this movie without them. Like, I just know that Ryan Gosling, she was not going to make this movie without Ryan Gosling. Turned out to be one of the better choices. She was not going to make this movie without Margot Robbie. Like, these are just the choices that she made. And so she had a vision. She went out there, she executed it. I think it deserves a 6.5.
If Ryan Gosling has one fan in the world, it's me. I love Ryan Gosling. He is the sexiest man alive, and I will not accept any other answers.
Jack Black, come on.
Oh, yes. Second is Jack Black, of course. And Jack Black and oh god, I can't think of his name off the top of my head. Who Callie's gonna look like as an old man?
Steve Buscemi?
Steve Buscemi, Jack Black, Ryan Gosling. Okay.
Jack Nicholson.
Yeah. Anyway. Yes.
Well, the Jacks.
The Gosling is great. He's fantastic. He acts. It is. Yeah. As Mimi said, he does such a great job of showing his range in this movie, and it really did look like he just. That's why I said, like I said earlier, just he looked like he was having the most fun. Of anybody in the cast, and that's just his role, is just like be silly kind of doofus, and he's great, and he has some funny ass lines. I mean, yeah, the Mojo Dojo Casa House is, I don't know what it is about that. That's so funny, but it is. And then with the mink coat and the hair and the glasses with the headband, it was just
perfect.
yeah. I was gonna say he kills it. He kills it. I just think overall, yeah, as the movie, bits and pieces to like, overall messy. But not. I think it's like a movie worth watching once. So for that, I'll give it a 6. I'll give it a 6. It's okay. It's okay.
I think I would also give this movie a 6 out of 10. It's not the worst movie I've ever seen. I mean, visually, Barbie Land, I love it. We're so used to seeing like so much computer generated images and all that, but to see like characters walking around with their martini glasses and there's no martini in it, and they're at the beach but the water is plastic,
No, it's
and
funny.
all those little elements of the movie. She's pouring milk and nothing's coming out. She's taking a fake shower. Like, I thought that stuff was so refreshing, just because we're just overloaded with fake stuff all the time. Like, if you compare this to like Transformers, where it's like the whole movie was made on a computer and like none of it's real. So to see stuff that's like actually not real, and you can enjoy the fact that, yeah, this is not a real beach, it's not real sand, that's a backdrop, that's not a real sky. I did enjoy those parts. Some of the characters I enjoyed. The performances, I love Ryan Gosling. He pretty much steals like every scene that he's in. So that I love. So yes, I would give this movie a 6 out of 10. It was great. I probably would watch it if I was, scrolling through Netflix looking for something to fall asleep to. I would put on the Barbie movie if it was available. So yeah, that pretty much wraps up my thoughts on that, and that was Last Page.